indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Simpson, roll call please.
Trustee Brady?
Here.
Trustee Krueger?
Present.
Trustee Bosmatos? Present. Trustee Vito?
Here.
Trustee Rogo?
Here.
Trustee Lang?
Here.
President Martin?
Here. Mr. Collins?
Commissioner Villanova,
I'm here.
Commissioner Creech, and Commissioner Duarte and Kalis are absent with prior notice. Commissioner Johnson?
Here.
Commissioner Powers is here, and Chairman Rafato.
Here. Thank you, sir. Mr. Spondelis, any changes to the agenda?
There are no changes.
Thank you, sir. Clerk Simpson, citizens' concerns and comments?
There are none.
No comments. Business?
Discussion regarding concept review process, introduced by Village Manager Spondelis.
Thank you. Well, let me begin first by actually thanking all of you for making the time tonight. I know this is a new night for the board. It's a Thursday night. Thank you to the Plan Commission for making a special meeting. The idea tonight is a couple of things. One, the topic globally is concept review. And this process was one, and I'll explain where it came from, but this is meant to be a discussion. There's a very short bit of presentation. The rest is all you guys. It's you asking questions of staff, it's staff responding, us coming to some kind of common ground on what a concept review process should look like, so that everybody gets what they need to out of it, meaning the development community leaves a concept review discussion with all the information they need in order to make a business decision as to whether or not they proceed. And staff leaves with a foundation of understanding where particularly the board comes from as far as your opinions on any particular project. Specifically, this is to drill down into the process to make sure that all of your questions are answered. I think there is, and again, I'll get to how we got here, but it seems there may be a lot of questions as to some of the details within a PUD, what it is, what it needs to include, what it shouldn't include, what the concept review process intent is, what the takeaways are, and we want to be able to improve that process. And that's what this is, right? We're all players in the same team. So we want to make sure that everyone's playing from the same rule book, or playbook, is probably a better way to put that. This started in a conversation that I was having with Trustee Papantos. Following the last concept review, I had a lot of questions in general because the way it played out, this has nothing to do with the conclusion at all. This is about the process. Prior to that concept review discussion, I had individual conversations with trustees that said that they had some concerns about the project that didn't come out during the meeting. And Trustee Papantos and I were having that conversation, and the suggestion was made that maybe we all need to get in a room and talk about what a concept review is. One of my frustrations was that the process was so specific at the board level that the larger picture was missed, which really is a land use question, right? The concept review should start with the general ask of, is fill-in-the-blank project appropriate at fill-in-the-blank location? Globally, that's what we're talking about anytime we're talking about concept review. Later in the process, you get into hours of operation and building sizes and what materials, and while those things are important for anyone making a decision to have in their mind so you know what to expect, before you get there, you still have to ask whether this use is appropriate in this location. So what I set out to do, and then challenge CD staff to come up with, is let's not change the process, but just get a little more detailed and focused on what exactly the concept review process should be. And tonight, first you'll hear from Attorney Maluzzi, who's going to do a brief presentation just to get us kind of on board with what a PUD is and go through some of the specific aspects of that. Then Director Jennings is going to talk about a tool that he created that is meant to focus, one, the memo that particularly the board, if we're talking about the first step, that the board receives that outlines there are 9 questions, 9 specific questions that starts with land use and ends with TIF. And these are written as yes or no questions, and then there's a fillable column on the right so that the board sees this is the issue, this is the answer related to that specific project. The point is to, again, focus the conversation, whether it's the memo or whether it's our public discussion, on the appropriate matters of a concept review process. So he will introduce that, he will distribute one, the blank one, we'll ask for questions from the group, and then just for the sake of example, we completed that same worksheet using the most recent concept review, so Opus. We took all the none of it is new information, took all the information that was in the memo, but inserted it into answering those 9 questions so that you all would see what that would look like using the new form, the new tool. And again, it's not anything more than a structure for the memo and a structure for the conversation. As you know, there are 2 types of concept reviews. There's the one that is required by code, which is for a PUD, and that is 95% of everything that goes before the board as concept review is for a PUD. The remaining ones are for, Andrew, how would you describe them? Major.
It's a major site plan that has some sort of unique issues associated with it. Zoning code change, unique land use associated.
But not a PUD. There are very few of those. That's the quote-unquote voluntary concept review process. Because they happen so infrequently, number 1, and number 2, because the process really should be the same, whether it's voluntary or not, we're focusing on PUDs, because it's easier to have the information and ignore portions of it when it's not a PUD than work the other way. So there are 2 types. We're focusing on the pre-PUD concept review. There is no ask at the end of this meeting. This really is meant to be a conversation. I suppose the only exception to that is we ask for your buy-in. We really want to be able to walk out of here with everyone being on the same page, with a better understanding of what to expect from the process, and for us to have a better understanding of how to deal with the business community. This is very important concept review because it gives the petitioner the opportunity to hear whether or not their project fits within the vision of the community. And based on that answer, they need to make some serious business decisions. And I think one of the things that is lacking, even on staff side, is a determination, an opinion. And that's one of the things that you will see at the bottom of the worksheet, is that there is a flat-out staff recommendation, yes or no, period. I think it is not doing anyone a service to not say, look, here's the criteria, here are the answers based on what we have been given, and here's the answer. It's a math problem, and I don't think that we're doing you or you any favors by not giving you a bottom line answer. That doesn't mean that this is concept review, and one of the things we're going to talk about is the opportunity to say no. That's one of the things we want to focus on, one of the things that Attorney Maluzzi is going to talk about, and I imagine what a lot of the questions are going to be based on. When can I say no? And to give you a preview, when it comes to concept review, whenever you want. And I think one of the things that we need to change culturally, all of us, staff, elected, appointed, is it's not a bad thing to say no. It's a good thing, it's helpful. The business community needs to know if they are, it's not about being welcome, but it's whether or not that project fits in with the vision of the community. And from there, they can make the investment that they need to make, or realize that, hey, you know, okay, we'll come up with something different, or we'll go somewhere else. And that's only fair. It's fair to them, it's fair to you, and it's fair to staff. So one thing before we get started, I guess I should have done at the top of the meeting. I think the Plan Commission has met our new Assistant Community Development Director, Steve Robles. The board, I don't think, has had the opportunity yet, unless you met him casually. Steve is here, Brooke is here. I did not ask the rest of staff to be here because really this is the pyramid. It's staff, Plan Commission, board. So this is a conversation. So please, once Mallory is done, I may interject, Andrew may interject, Steve, Brooke, any of you. We need to talk this through. So let's do that. I will stop talking before it's midnight. And Mallory, if you will.
All right, let me just move so I can move through the slides really quick.
Take a trip.
And this won't be very long because we touched on, John touched on a lot of the stuff I'm going to as well. But just regarding PUD, oh, sure. So for PUDs is required in the section 19 of the code. And this process, as you guys are aware, is not a formal approval. You're not making any binding decision when you give direction at a concept review, because they still have the right to go through the formal PUD process, the preliminary PUD and final PUD. But rather, you're giving them direction, both the board and the Plan Commission, on the bigger picture, and that is more on feedback towards to the developer on what you want to see, what you like, and what you don't like, and it can be including the proposed land use. As John was mentioning, and as the worksheet will detail a lot more, there are standards for PUDs similar to special use and similar to variations that you see that they have to meet and fit in between, and a lot of them is the consistent with the comprehensive plan, orderly development of the area, etc. And so if the land use doesn't fit within that, then it is okay to give negative feedback in the fact that you don't believe that project fits in that location, or how it's laid out. And the whole idea for the PUD is it's a unique zoning tool. It is meant to give flexibility to a developer and create unique development concepts using economical and efficient uses of the land that aren't possible in a conventional zoning. For the concept review aspect, it's to give you the initial plan that outlines the development concept, how it's the loose layout of the site, the other uses in the area, before the developer spends the money to go through all the detailed design work. But then you're ensured that that character development that you're seeing that you're presented at the concept review remains throughout the whole process. So it's kind of a give and take from both sides. A PUD typically will require a lot of zoning relief and then gives you more flexibility, because while a PUD is allowed usually as a special use within a zoning district, it doesn't specify what is within that PUD, and the PUD is very flexible, the variety of uses. So for uses, the uses themselves include residential uses, and then whatever the underlying zoning district, you look at the uses within there. But there's some flexibility as far as density, more than one building can be on a lot. So those are things that are atypical of the zoning code that are allowed within a PUD. So given that it's a big give and take between the village and the developer, you have a lot more flexibility than, say, with a special use, which in contrast is something that has already been determined to be expressly permitted in that zoning district, that use has been. This PUD, while they might be tying to special uses or permitted uses, they're trying to put them in a lot where it wouldn't necessarily fit without this PUD process. So that's kind of how the PUD is laid out. And again, even in here, having a mix of uses in a PUD is only permitted if it's compatible and necessary to achieve the objectives of the PUD and the zoning code. So there already you're given a lot of flexibility when you're looking at the different uses. And I think, oh yeah, that's all I have as far as PUD. As I said, very brief. It's a unique tool. You guys see it a lot. We have a lot of developments that have utilized that tool, and that's how we have like Town Center, Uptown 500, where you have this mix of residential and commercial within an area and a specific layout, and it has a lot more detail. So I'm obviously here to answer any questions, but I'll turn it over to Andrew for the next step.
Excuse me, if I may.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't a developer come in with, you've got our downtown. Why wouldn't the developer just come in and subdivide the lots and say, come in with the plan, this is what I wanna build, I'm gonna subdivide the lots, and then go through whatever the process might be?
For something like, and Andrew can correct me if I'm misstating this, but something like how Town Center is laid out, even in subdivided lots, still wouldn't be allowed because you have to then build in streets and how close they are and the density. They don't fit under the code and would be already asking for a lot of variances. A PUD expects that there's gonna be a lot of variations to the code with setback and density, and that's why it's a useful and allowable tool.
One of the other reasons that you see a lot of planning and developments coming to you right now is that there was a deliberate decision made when the MX districts were established to set a very low threshold for property size to trigger the requirement for the PUD process. So in the MX district, any parcels, any of the MX districts, the transit-oriented mixed use, the commercial, residential mixed use, they all have a low threshold for when you are, as a developer, required to submit your project as a PUD. You could have a single building PUD come through. It doesn't necessarily need any variations from the code, but because of the location, there's a lot of thought as to the character of that development in the context of the town center, for example. You want to make sure that it fits in, and so the PUD process would require those types of developments.
Thank you.
On a PUD, while they are expected to have a lot of variations or variances that are gonna be granted, do we have to grant all of the variances from code?
No, you don't have, that's part of the process in going through. You don't have to grant all the variations. If it makes sense as far as the layout and furthers the purpose, it depends on what the variation is, let's put it that way. Because the code lists out all the different aspects of a PUD and considerations and standards, and some specifically call out that it's expected that there will be a variation, or for example, you can have more than one building on a lot that's already spelled out in PUD. Usually you would need a variation for that. But this, it already calls it out here. But other ones you would need to actually spell out the variations. You're not separately approving every variation of the PUD. It's part of the whole package.
Right, and I'm thinking of things like, when Uptown 500 came in, some of their unit sizes were much below our code. And they said, well, it's a PUD, and I don't feel that, they were large enough. And I don't want to approve things that are what we consider less than desirable on a normal basis.
I mean, and you have the control to discuss those aspects and consider those aspects, but obviously you want to look at it as the project as a whole too. As far as what are the benefits with having, the smaller units. Maybe you'd be comfortable with something smaller, but not that small, and then it's part of the negotiation and the discussion.
Thank you.
So, I have a question. So appropriate to your point, pre-PUD concept review. We actually had that with the 17 acres, correct?
Yes.
But it wasn't a full concept. It was the initial, that was a little confusing because it was initial concept for one portion of that 17 acres. And it still needed to be completed. There still was additional buildings that needed to be added to that, which were unknowns at the time. We as a board gave the nod to go to that next step, but knowing that it has to be complete with other buildings and make it a project as opposed to we'll start this now and then we'll fill in the rest later. We wanted a complete project out.
Yes, but that's not what they took from it. And
Shame.
this is hard. I don't want to go down the road of we're using that project as an example because honestly, that is what brought this up. But to be clear, none of this is meant to change your mind or anything else, or to be critical of that project itself. I will tell you that moving forward, the next step is that they will subdivide and will have nothing to do with the rest of the project. So you are getting what they showed you.
Well,
And can I just jump in really quick? So the PUD that they presented was not a phased project for the full 17 acres. It was a PUD just for their area. So some projects you've seen with PUDs have been phased for an entire area and the layout and these are different phases, how we want to build it out. I'm pretty sure that's how the western area was. That you knew you had those pads that were going to be built out and then as they got built, they would come to the Plan Commission and Board as the special uses and layout. And they were going to be phased. And this one was not presented in a phased manner. It was only for that small part of the 17 acres.
well, based on the questions I had asked and left them with, for my benefit, is I wanted to see a complete project and a complete phased project from them. And they said, oh yeah, that's what you'll see next time we come back and look at the case. I'm sure that's what it says. And so I would be disappointed if that's not how it.
The other thing I think that needs to be considered with that question is, as you're looking, as Melanie said, it wasn't phased, right? So you were presented with, and all you could judge is what you saw. So one of the things about that project is, well, what is the opportunity left on that land for a complete project? And, well, that's exactly it. So I think when you all are looking at a plan, I think you do have to consider, regardless of what the developer says, how realistic is it just based on what you see? Because the issue is going to be access. So what that land is meant to be is mixed use. Well, it's taking up, I don't know the details off the top of my head, I mean the specifics. It's like 14 acres. It's 7 acres, okay. Well, it's 7 acres though, right off the bridge, which leaves access only off the frontage. Well, frontage is direct access only off the frontage, which means you have to be going east. So 3 directions, you can't get to it, but for driving through a residential project. So I think that in and of itself should have been a red flag, not to the board, but to all of us, that says any thought of this project being something more than what's presented is not realistic. Is that, Andrew, is that fair?
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Well, it does, but it, you know, I think we were misled, and I don't know how appropriate it is to bash a project that's in the motions right now, whether it is or isn't, but I still, that's what I think I'm talking about this. Right. And so, I think it's a waste of, I think I alluded to that at the meeting, that it's already a difficult piece of property to get to. It's a destination, okay, and so pushing anything further away from that bridge and access even makes it more difficult to develop and probably never will be developed.
But for maybe a resident, an extension of that project, or more townhomes, or more condo buildings. You're right. The challenge of bringing in a commercial or retail aspect, which is what a mixed use requires, is probably never going to be met.
And then one last thing too, when it was all about the tax base, it was a balance of taxes in there.
Yes.
You have just property taxes, but sales tax, as we noted, Greg mentioned that sales taxes would be better served in that area as well. So having some businesses in there, commercial or so on, to have sales tax as well as property tax would pay off much better for that piece of property.
So I'm really hoping that, and I know I'm jumping the gun because Andrew has this, we tried to categorize all the questions for impact, TIF, land use, access, like we tried to categorize the questions so that in the future, and that's why we chose to use the most recent one, which happens to be Opus, to fill in the blanks. So you would see exactly what it would look like on a project that you're familiar with, as opposed to just making something up. And again, all the information that we put in there, are you passing out the blank ones?
Yeah.
Yeah. Comes from the memo. But the memo is lengthy, and there's a lot of information in the memo. So this tries to bottom line it a little bit. So hopefully this helps
I
address.
know you were talking about this tonight.
Now it's out of bed.
Thank you, Ken Brady, then Mary Ken.
Thank you. I wanna, we talked about the 500 building, right across the street. We've got that done, whatever it was called.
Dunshire?
Yeah.
Yes.
When it came in as a retail center, and it came back to us after the concept review, kind of given a nod, it looked nice, come back with townhomes in the back. Then he came back the third time with apartments on top. No concept of parking or anything else. It just kept turning into more and more and more of a disillusion of what we're looking for. How does that happen?
I'll refrain from answering because it's on the agenda for November 5th. I'm not even kidding. That particular developer is looking to do a project on a smaller piece of land at the corner. So,
So not so intrusive as that monster you originally was looking at.
It comes,
Is
the
it-
reason why it came back is because the concept and the uses changed from the initial time you saw in concept review, so that once the character changed, they had to come back before you to get your approval or your consent or review before going on to the next step. So the reason why you saw it 3 times is because the developer changed the character every single time, and you had to go through the process again.
You just kept
Is
stuffing stuff
November
in there.
5th another concept
Yes.
review?
and I don't want to, it's in November. It's either the first meeting or the second meeting, depending on what the agenda looks like. The request has been made that he present to the board a new concept on just the corner parcels that he owns.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Trustee Kruger and then trustee Peck.
Thank you. Mallory, I understand that the PUD is, the concept of zoning relief being a flexibility tool for us, right?
Yes, and the developer.
Right, so that was my point. The developer knows that too. So to trustee Papantos's suggestion before about, say, with Uptown 500, that the unit sizes were very small, 450 square feet, or in our code calls for 650. If the developer knows that a PUD allows that flexibility, and we know that a PUD allows that flexibility, if we want to adhere to code on unit size, isn't that a contentious then public argument with the developer? You know, these are very small. I don't like them small. I would rather them adhere to code and be 650. Well, couldn't the petitioner then say, well, it's a PUD and I'm allowed the relief, and I can build them that
They're
small?
not guaranteed relief. The idea behind the PUD, the purpose of it is to allow flexibility. That doesn't mean it has to be granted in every single instance, because we're given, it has to meet our standards. And as we'll go through, there's a lot of different aspects and standards to look at, and if you feel that due to unit size, it doesn't meet one of the standards, then you can not be comfortable with that kind of relief.
There's a trade, taking that example, I think is actually pretty good, because there's a trade-off between the size of the unit, the parking requirement. They're gonna build fewer than 1-to-1 indoor parking spaces that our zoning code requires, but do they need it because they're demonstrating that they have a small unit? So there's a trade-off where they're saying that this as a total package works. Yes, we needed 2 variations from the code to make it happen. Those 2 variations go together. We got a height variation to increase the green space on the property. So you're looking at it as a total package, and it's up to them really to justify those different elements of that package. They still have an obligation as they go through the PUD process. They have an obligation to demonstrate that the package works, that they're able to meet the standards for a special use by showing that they're not creating a negative impact on adjacent properties, et cetera. So the way I would look at it is that, yes, it's multiple variations, but they still have to show how the full package works together.
Well, that's helpful, to think of it as a total, but we're still allowed to tear apart the parts if we have to.
If there is an aspect of their application that the consensus is during preliminary PUD that it needs to be modified, then absolutely, they would have to come back for final PUD and say, look, we've dropped the number of units, you've requested that the units be slightly larger, and that's certainly okay at a preliminary PUD to then set the stage for the final PUD in that way. We conditionally approve the preliminary PUD with the understanding that you will need to come back with slightly fewer units because of this issue.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you, trustee Contos. Trustee Krueger? Ben?
Oh, do you wanna go first? Nope. Sorry. A little bit away from that topic. Manager Spondelis, you said that the concept review is meant to say, is the land use good? Can we reject a concept review based on the use as a whole? For instance, we have enough senior living care facilities. Can we say conceptually, no, we don't want another business of that type in the village because we can't provide the core services, especially if it's in a TIF district?
At concept review, unless Mallory throws something at me, the answer would be.
That's why I was looking at her.
The answer is yes, you can say no for the use, at that level. We have enough senior housing,
Okay.
that's it.
And that's one of the things that market is their demonstration of demand for the project. Now, obviously, if they ultimately provide evidence of a need, or and there's other aspects, you can't say no for any protected purpose. Is the only things you need to worry about. We would give you heads up on anything that is unique. Like, for example, the PACE use, not only was that not a PUD, but it also has a very unique, because they're a regional government agency, so they have certain rights that are different than a normal developer. But we'll give you a heads up on those so you know if it's, a unique situation. But in general, yeah, you can say no to the use.
This is a great question too, because it dovetails into that, why it's important to say no. Because if you, again, this is a general example, not about the last petitioner, but if the board says no, it allows the developer to decide, okay, here's what I know. We can go there because that's the next step, right? The next step is, well, special use, or what the zoning is, or, all of that stuff. Oh, thanks. But the board probably isn't going to be willing, even though this is a PUD, to, as trustee Krueger said, provide a bunch of variances, because it's not really what they're looking for here. Or if you get to the bottom when it comes to TIF requests. Well, if the board said rather clearly that we're not interested in additional senior housing, then me as the developer, I know that I'm probably gonna have to foot this bill. So at the concept review, you're much more available to give them the hard truth. And then they can decide from there whether or not, this is still worth it to them.
Right, because they have always the right to proceed through the process,
Right.
and then you get into the further standards and elements and looking at the actual evidence in front of it. The concept is a very broad base, and especially once you start talking about TIF funds, that's a lot more discretion in your book, or if you're contributing land or anything like that, then you have even more authority and power behind it to say where you want to spend your money.
And then my next part of that same question is, if we say yes, do we have to say, can we say no to aspects later for the, okay, so we're not bound.
You don't know
This is not a binding decision.
Right, you don't know the details of the project. There might be things like, I like the concept that, I'm concerned about the traffic pattern, the traffic impact, and we wanna see a traffic impact study and see how the circulation works, and if they come back and don't sufficiently address those, then that would be, that's a big standard to consider. So, yeah, no, you have the ability to say no later as well.
Thank
They
you.
still have to meet the standards.
Thank you, trustee Contos. Commissioner Ravato?
So, we were talking about variations. Can
like the unit size.
The code does say something, I don't have this link, it's in here somewhere. It says something to the effect that it's advantageous for the developer to be able to identify that type of information as early as possible. At preliminary PV, you're required to provide a preliminary list of any of the variances or other types of code relief that you're requesting. But there's advice in the concept review application that it's to their benefit to be able to disclose those types of things if they know of it early on.
Thank you.
Any other questions at this point? Okay, who's up next? Andrew.
So I think John set the stage really well earlier. This question, John has had us look at this more than one time. This is the most recent time.
That was the nicest way you could have said that.
About a year or so ago, we had this internal discussion among the senior staff of how to better present the information to the board and to the plan commission, so that the board and plan commission are both getting something out of it. The development community is getting something out of it, and the staff is getting the guidance that we need to help that developer through the process. We started by working on our memo to try to turn it into a standard format. So we went through 2 iterations of retooling our memo, where we present the information first to the board and then to the plan commission, so that we were making sure that we hit certain points. So this format is the evolution of that. I think the memo, because I write them, I think they're good, but it's obviously not conveying all the information that you need to provide feedback on the basic elements of the project at its earliest stages. So the purpose of this is to try to simplify the review. It gives us the opportunity, before you even see it, it gives us the opportunity to go through these same topics. These topics are the essential elements of the concept. So we've taken them from highest level down to try to draw out from ourselves first, and then from the board and plan commission, the feedback on each one of these things. So you have it in front of you. The idea of this would be to structure our staff memo in this way. This would be front and center on our staff memo, to try to focus the attention toward these specific things before we get into the next step, which is more detailed. Of course, there'd be an opportunity with the developer there at the meeting to ask some questions, give them some additional feedback, but we want to start with these, focus on this first, and make sure that we're all on the same page about how the village views the project with respect to the context of the development, our comprehensive plan, et cetera. So just one by one, I'm not going to go through these forever, but let's just quickly go through it. The first one on here is the land use. The yes or no question that we've asked here is the project consistent with the comprehensive plan, other village plans, and programs or initiatives? So what we would do is we would explain what the comprehensive plan says, and then we would give our analysis of the proposal. Does the proposal stack up to what the comprehensive plan envisions for this area?
How old is the comprehensive plan?
The comprehensive plan, well, the comprehensive plan is a 2003 document. There are several updates to the comp plan. So the comprehensive plan is all of those things, but the document itself is 2003 with some updates.
And the reason I ask is because obviously, you know, what was going on in 2003 to today is so different that I think that's something to take into consideration on this.
Yeah, it's a living document, and we do take sections of it like we are doing currently with the station area plan and updating it. So at its foundation is 2003, but yeah, it's a living document. But you're right, I mean, things change.
I tell you, all the years I've been planning commission, trends seem to change like every 5 years. You know, it goes from single-family houses to apartments, condos, you know, back to here, back to there. So it's just about the time you get a couple of builders coming into town, that phase is over with.
And that's part of the direction for the consultant who's working on the station area plan, is trying to make a document that is able to adapt let's assume that we're not gonna make all the right guesses. So how does this document adapt to changes in the market? So that is one of the specific things we asked them to do for that plan. Are there any other questions on the first one, land use, the high level? Programs and initiatives is on here because not everything is in the comp plan. We have other items, we have strategic planning items, we have other projects that could impact the village's vision for an area. So we wanted to make sure that it wasn't just the comp plan, but we have other documents, other planning and initiatives that might even be taken into consideration. Number 2, context. Does the project relate well to the existing area? Fairly straightforward. Does the project relate well to the area? In some cases, there might be lower weight to this. It's going to be a yes or no answer, but there might be lower weight to it. You have the Wolf Run Estates area, for example. The degree to which a project in that area relates to the surrounding area is offset by the comprehensive plan vision for the rest of the area also changing. So, but it's still a yes or no question that we would provide some feedback on. Third one, impact. Is there a positive impact of the development potential of the surrounding area? Again, phrased as a yes or no. Does this catalyze additional development around it? Does it have a positive spillover? Number 4, and you'll see when we get into the example of the opus how the phasing is phrased on that, but is the plan for future phases appropriate? So if they're coming in with a 3-phase development, do the phases work well? If the market were to change between phase 2 and phase 3, do the first 2 phases function as a standalone development? These are the types of things that you would look at. Number 5, visual character. Is the project consistent with appearance and material standards? We have design guidelines in the code. Is the visual character of this project consistent with what is imagined in that location? Number 6.
Andrew?
Yes.
Do you think it would be helpful on number 5 if the plan commission were given a picture on something that they're looking to approve, one among the aesthetics, to have a picture of the surrounding area, the buildings, so they see how this building is going to fit?
It is one of the requirements. So when you do a concept review for a plan unit development, you are supposed to provide site context photographs. A lot of times, like in the example of Opus, it's a picture of the trees that are next door. They do have the visual character of the Prairie Park development in there. But yes, they are supposed to include character photos for the surrounding area.
Because that could have an architectural, could be an architectural disaster if, you know, guys coming in with a modern building and he's in a area where it's all contemporary, you know. So I think that'd be important. Thanks.
I was 6, market. Is there a demonstration of demand for the project? This is the question of have they already provided some sort of background to demonstrate that this is likely to be in high demand in this area? If there's not information at that point, this is a good part of the review process to pause and ask the developer, you know, what are you basing this on? Why do you believe you'll be able to absorb 100 more units in this location when we have 900 under construction right now? What are you basing that on? 7, access. Is the proposed access suitable for the project? In our mind, this is exterior access primarily, but could also include how they're arranging interior access. 1,000 units going down a small driveway, one single driveway. You could, at that point, say yes, no. So that is it for the ones that would be both Planning Commission and Board. We have two items that are specific, really more toward the Board. The TIF request items. Number 8, TIF request. Is there a TIF incentive request associated with the project? If so, is the request an effective use of TIF funds? Number 9, previous expenditures.
Excuse me, Andrew.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Does the petitioner come that early at concept? Do we always know if there's a TIF
If
ask?
they're in a TIF district, we ask them to at least give us some idea if they anticipate it.
Okay, so we lead them.
We do ask them to provide do you believe this is likely, do you not? If they come later, it's not particularly helpful to us to find out in the middle of the preliminary PUD process that they had anticipated TIF ask all along.
Okay, thanks.
That answer can be surprising. Sometimes we'll get a pretty hard no on a project that's in a TIF district, so I think it's worth putting that in as well if they've said absolutely not already. Previous expenditures, this differs from the TIF request in that it's money that we've already allocated or already spent in that area that may benefit that project. In the Opus example, this might be money that we've programmed for the bridge, money that we've put into the Meadow Lane Basin, for example. So has the village already spent the money? And then number 10, as John said, it's an overall recommendation. Based on the concept that you have in front of you right now, how does the staff feel about it? Then we'd be asking the board the same thing. How do you, based on this, the materials that you have, do you believe that the project should proceed to the next step in this form? Any questions? I do have the example that we did as an exercise with Opus.
One thing I'm not seeing on here is whether or not there's impact on core services. Would that be a legitimate thing to analyze?
We did have some analysis actually in the memo that did talk about that.
I would actually put that question on the board members. I think so far, everything has been based on pretty concrete, project-specific items. I would say that question is important. I also am sensitive to the fact that question may be interpreted by the elected officials as, well, staff just doesn't like it. So I just want to avoid any of that kind of stuff. If that's a question that's important to the board, then I think it's an important question to deal with.
So it's all right for us to ask and expect an answer?
Sure.
Yes, trustee Vogel.
John and I talked about this earlier. I think it's important. The staff is the experts on what a nursing home's gonna, how they're gonna extend our fire department, our police department. So I don't think that's something that we can determine. I think you're gonna have to help us with it.
A lot of, even the idea of saying no, there used to be staff recommendations, there aren't anymore. And we're trying to get back to that, is to be able to address the things that need to be addressed without fear of it being misinterpreted. So, I think we could add that as a 10th question, moving the overall recommendation to number 11 if everybody agrees.
It does fit really nicely on one page right now.
You know what, you just adjust the margin.
Change the font.
Smaller
Change the
font.
Smaller font.
You can get it down to font size 4 instead of the.
All right, I'll see this.
Document gonna function, how are we gonna use it?
It'll be part of the memo. Andrew will still write a memo like he does now.
Answering each one of these?
You will get this form in your memo. Andrew will still write the narrative, but you will get it in your packet as ahead of any concept review.
So, we'll get this ahead of when we vote, are we voting on what we put on here, or?
No, you will be taking the information that you were provided and deciding whether or not conceptually
Yes, it's not a vote.
conceptually you agree or not.
Okay.
Yes.
Good.
It's like standards for variation.
So these questions, a lot of these questions are rephrased standards from one of the standards that you're later gonna see in the public hearing process. So the standard for a rezoning, the standard for a special use, the standard for a variation, a lot of these questions are paraphrased versions of the standards, and that's intentional. That is to try to draw out early on in the discussion some of these elements that are gonna come back later on, but at a really broad level.
If I may, there was a question here about adding the impact on core services to the form. What's the consensus, Mr. Vito, trustee Vito?
I mean, I don't care, but it's just, I do not know
You've
that
been very
nursing home's
quiet.
gonna cause some ambulance calls that,
Well, I think it's all.
say, a
because
clothing store wouldn't. I mean, I don't think I need an answer to that question to be spelled out, but whatever. I think a lot of these are self-evident, but fine if we're doing this?
Trustee Vogel,
I think we should add it.
trustee Krueger,
I think we should add it.
trustee Brady. Yeah. Trustee Lang. Three. Trustee Pantos.
Yeah,
Cantor, yeah,
everybody's seen this.
except for trustee Vogel.
I said I don't care.
He's
Yes or no, Joe?
Absent.
Any other bad
flexible.
fees might be-
No, just to have fun.
Any other bad fees?
The dissenting opinion was for.
Well, now you're talking about revenue.
It's, for
You're
service.
talking about impact fees?
Impact fees
Oh,
are
impact. I
That's
thought
the
you said impact
difference,
fees.
yeah, impact versus impact fees, so even if it has an impact on core services, it doesn't necessarily mean we can do impact fees, it's an entirely different analysis that would come from.
I think
Yeah.
Trustee Brady meant impacts to traffic congestion.
Oh, yeah.
Road
Oh,
damage.
okay.
I think that would be worked in, right, Andrew, as opposed to a separate question?
We had, so in the memo, when we covered this topic, it was phrased as some sort of impact on village services and infrastructure. So we did have both in the memo. So we can find some way to phrase it in a yes or no. I can give myself one. Where'd the extra go?
What, do you need one? Need one to reference to?
Whoops.
So again, as we look at this, this is, I know I've said it multiple times, this is simply filled out based on the memo that the board already received for the most recent concept review. That's the reason we're using this as the example.
Yeah, and you know, the purpose of this is really not to dwell on the Opus project. It is, we wanted, as a staff, when we were trying to work through the questions that we thought got to the heart of the concept review, we wanted to see how it actually worked. So we sat down, we happened to have those plans handy, and the review is fresh in our heads. So this is, again, really not about Opus. This is about, does this concept review format work in real life? So we wanted to go through the exercise, apply the questions. We actually did tweak some of these questions as we went through it because it didn't make sense. So the end result of this was a result of the feedback from ourselves as we went through this one development. And in the end, I think that it works. We didn't put the core services infrastructure on here, but I think that it ultimately does work to be able to say yes or no to these things.
I thought you meant that this project works.
The format works. It gets you a yes or no on each one of these things. Now, there may be additional information you see on each one of these. It's not one word, but it starts off with a yes or a no, and then there's some additional explanation beyond that. Like I said, I don't want to dwell specifically on it, but I wanted you to have an example of what the information looked like in this format. Any questions on this? We we had the only other items that we had just the confirmation, I suppose, that that everyone understands that this is the intention, is that this format would be included in the next concept review that you have. As John said, we don't have a lot of non-PUD concept reviews. We would apply the same format to those as well. But this is primarily about the PUDs. You see more concept reviews than not are PUD related.
You won't go back to previous plans. We have a few PUDs in the process right now.
This doesn't affect their application process. This is more about packaging the information in a way that it sets the framework for your discussions. So we're trying to draw out the information from their application materials, present it to you in a very concise way, and then hopefully solicit the feedback from each body in these same topics.
It's going forward from
Yes.
basically.
We're not gonna call them back and say we're gonna do it again.
Now, in fairness too, no, Opus, and I hate jumping on them because it's not.
Just happens to me.
It's not a two-way conversation, they're not here to defend themselves either, but, you know, there's a lot of questions that arise for them, and it was even before this form came up. And so, will we be going back to using what's on here in future discussions with Opus?
Well, I mean, this is really concept review. I think you should use this like you would in the future as a reference for you to base change, improvements, whatever on from concept review. This is all fact. So I think you can use this as your reference as you move forward. I don't know, because it's a concept review worksheet, I don't know that we would include it in the next steps.
Yeah.
But I think it's handy for you to be able to base some of your decisions on, yeah.
And
Well,
also, as Andrew said, a lot of these are pulled from the standards that are going to be set out in the staff report anyways for preliminary review. So these and the facts behind it, assuming things don't change, are gonna be laid out similarly when staff does their analysis of the standards too.
Well, I was already taking notes for our next meeting with Opus before this even came
Yeah.
out of things we need to start asking. And it's nice to see a lot of that already.
And
here.
they know all this. Nothing on here would be a surprise to them. The information, even the no's that are on here, staff told them. It was we were very upfront with them about the concerns about, additional senior housing, the lack of retail, none of this would be, it was all in the memo too. And they were provided the memo.
Was that the staff recommendation?
No, absolutely.
That was the same,
So candidly, I did ask about a full phase plan. And they answered us with that, oh yeah, you'll see that next.
Well, I think someone correct me, or didn't they say we'll look into it?
No, I think it was.
Were they specific?
I thought they were pretty.
Yeah. That we'll come back with a full phase plan that'll have commercial in it, that'll have, the tax base that you're looking for. And that satisfied me, that was enough for me to change my maybe to a, yeah, definitely, let's have these guys back. And then to see that they weren't planning that is very disappointing.
Then I think that's where you can make your decisions when it comes time to actually vote on it for preliminary PUD.
And it's unfortunate for them because at that point, they're spending a lot of money.
They still
For that
concept that
next
PC
phase.
to go through.
Right.
They still have to go through the concept review at PC.
We've had this discussion with them. We met with them since then, and we basically had the table with us the last time we met with them. Went through it, we were fairly open, they understand where they are in the process. They do not have, because their concept is the same concept, they are not required, as we saw in some previous notes, they're not required to go back to the board at this moment, for an initial concept, because the concept is the same, so next step would be for the local plan commission.
So we're gonna shut it down again, we should shut it down now. I mean, it's gonna be like the same thing as the trucking joint. I mean, we gave them a green light, then they go spend all this money, they come back, and it's just like, what is it?
So, a couple of things that came out of this. One, in what form, because you mentioned the plan commission a couple of times, so in what form does this come to the plan commission? Or does it at all, or is it really more of your packet to us?
So it'll be, the way I would imagine this is that the board is gonna see the concept review first. They will see the staff comments. We'll have, in your memo, the board feedback will be worked into. So if the board had, additional comments on one of these items, that'll be part of the staff materials that go to the plan commission.
Okay, so we won't see this.
You will see
You had
this.
indicated that this was going to in the packet for the trustees.
You will see it. We're not gonna ask the plan commission about the TIF.
No, right, exactly, right.
But we'll provide, for example, we provide our staff comments here. If the board has a slightly different take on one of these topics, we'll include that in the memo and say the board has provided additional feedback, they asked these questions. We'll try to summarize, as we've done in the past, not the TVs, we'll try to
Hey, we do,
summarize,
right.
here's what happened with the board.
Does it make sense to simply add a third column for the plan commission? So that it's topic, staff comments, board comments?
It's hard to fit on my one sheet.
That is not my problem.
I need like 3 magnifying glasses.
You're gonna have to make it landscape.
taking.
But would that be helpful to have then a third column?
Yeah, oh, sure, it would
All
be
the
definitely
information
related
we
to.
can get is better.
It's been, right, exactly. Sure.
We've been fighting for a lot
Right.
of information, a lot of elevations, a lot more information, especially on the concept review. Because there's so many times that something comes up in front of the board, just a number of projects that I can come to mind, where they make a presentation, and then they come to us and they don't follow anything, or maybe only parts of what the board has recommended. And then we kind of fight back and forth and talking for a meeting for hours, and then it gets lost in translation sometimes, so.
And then the other, and I think Joe was going there, is that, you know, the one you're talking about, should they come back? And the sense sometimes, and this is not a new issue, is that the sense is that if the village board gives any type of tacit approval, that it's going to go through the plan commission. And I know that's not true, but once in a while, we get that sense that that's what's happening. Not all the time, but it will happen, you know, and if I think we've done a good job of avoiding that, you know. But something like this would help immensely, you know, and the clear comments that, and community development does a good job of summarizing if we haven't watched or weren't in attendance of concept reviews, they do a good job of summarizing all of that. So, as Jeff said, the more information we have, the better off we are as a plan commission.
The other thing is, like, on a project like this particular example, where it is so blatant, and then they give them somewhat of a go-ahead on, oh yeah, go ahead with it, and they go through some of the, whatever they do before they come with us, and the staff is not happy with it, why doesn't it go back to the board first, before it comes to us? So that they can see what kind of changes were made, or how much progress, or how much of their input was put into that particular project before it comes to the recommended product.
Well, I think the answer is, if you start that process of ping-ponging where the board, staff, where does it end? So I think
Well,
perhaps.
I'm just saying, in circumstances where it's, you know, fairly evident, there's been a couple of them where they've made these very rosy presentations to the board, and then it comes to us and we're going, what? That's not what they were talking about.
I mean, I think.
You have to streamline
Yeah.
the process too, though. You can't just keep
Right.
going back and forth. You have to move forward
I
with the
understand that,
project.
but if they don't do anything that you ask them to do,
Then you guys say
and
no.
then,
But so here's
But
the
it's a
thing.
concept.
Yeah.
The concept is probably not gonna change between the board and the plan commission. What's going to be different is the preliminary PUD. So the concept you're gonna see is probably what the board saw, and then you give your additional comments, probably on the more will be likely even more on the technical things, like, we wanna see these, because, I mean, again, it's very broad, they don't have to submit a lot of elevations or a lot of details at concept review, but you can give them an indication of what you wanna see, design guidelines, like, we want, you know, if it was lacking in brick, we wanna see more brick, those kind of things. So then when they come before you guys in preliminary PUD, they should incorporate both the board's changes and the plan commission's comments in one thing, but the concept isn't really gonna shift between the board and the plan commission on concept review alone. Because that's a lot of changes to make when they're still just getting the initial feedback.
Developers
Right.
do lie though.
Well, and if they get that preliminary PUD, that is what, I mean, that's a big thing.
Stop, really?
Trustee Cafantos.
Okay, I just wanna get this straight in my head. So, you have a PUD, and we'll take JD Global this time. Comes in
They
for
were not a PUD.
Okay, well, let's, comes in for concept review,
Okay?
and the board says no.
Mhm.
they did not have to go for concept review to the plan commission, and they did not. They just went directly to preliminary approval, correct?
It wasn't a PUD, so they went straight to their public hearing.
If it was a PUD,
They would have had to go to the
so
plan
even
commission for
if it was
concept
a
review.
negative vote, they still
It's
go
because it's not a, it's a non,
Okay,
both,
so it's
everything
that-
in concept is non-binding.
high level, 30,000 feet.
Yes,
And
30,000
then
feet.
the next step after the two concept review is
Is preliminary
preliminary,
PUD.
okay.
But it's
That's
their,
when they-
it's their choice to go to concept at the PC. If you say no, right, it's up to the developer to say, thank you for the no, but we're sticking with it, and move on to the plan commission.
Well, yeah, they can withdraw their application.
Or they withdraw their
But they can't
application.
skip the step of plan commission concept. Yes, I just want to
Correct.
make sure I've got the
Correct.
full in
Yes,
yet,
but
because
it's not
spelled out
automatic
anywhere.
that they would,
It is to their advantage. Putting yourself in their shoes, though, it's typically gonna be to their advantage. If they've gotten some kind of negative feedback at either body, it's gonna be to their advantage to take the concept review back before they put the preliminary PUD is a big jump in terms of the investment that they have to make in the property. In the time that it takes to get there, they may have money go hard on the property. So it is to their advantage to cycle back and do another bite of the concept review to make sure that everybody's on the same page before they spend all the money on the preliminary PUD submittal.
Trustee Krueger, then Commissioner, then trustee.
Thank you. So a developer comes to staff, they've got an idea, PUD or otherwise. Staff, looks it over, uses this new standard of questioning, fills this all out, negative recommendation. Board says, we love it. Yes, 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 yes. Does that give the petitioner a false sense of security that, you know, there could be a negative recommendation by staff? The board says 7-0, yes. It goes then to the plan commission, and the plan commission starts leaning with staff, and it comes back as a recommendation, and no, you guys were wrong. Where are we at that point in this development to not alienate the developer?
I mean, I don't think you can be wrong, because this is just an opinion, right? This is just a consensus of your opinion. So, if staff presents facts that would, you know, lead, now we didn't number these aren't weighted, so it's not like, you know, each one has a value, and if you're over this threshold,
I'm
it's a
10%
yes.
no on this, no.
Right, right. I don't know that there's an impact, because ultimately, you know, you still have to say yes or no at the preliminary PUD phase, but those have to be based on more than just your opinion. Like that answer, that vote has to be based on the criteria set forth in the code. So I don't know, I think the answer that it would probably give a developer is that the town's political. If I'm being honest, I think that's
what I want,
the.
I want that.
But I think that you've got,
What's wrong
one
with that?
one of the reasons we're suggesting this format is so that your discussion covers the same topics. That's the buy-in that we're looking for, is that if we present the information and the staff recommendation in this way, we're asking for the board's and the plan commission's discussion to cover these topics. It's not that the other details aren't important, but at the concept review, these are the most important things. So what we're asking for is that buy-in. These are the topics that we're all in agreement should get drawn to the forefront at this stage before they go on to the real detailed work.
And hope, because of all those reasons, hopefully we'll never be there. Because laying it out this plainly, I would think that would help the board make
Oh,
their
great deal.
decision.
Thank you.
Thank you, trustee Papantos. Commissioner Howard.
Krueger.
Sorry. Thank you.
Mary 1 and 2.
Mary, thank you. Trustee Mary. Commissioner.
So I was gonna piggyback on what Mary just said. If in a concept review, the board says yes, comes to us, what happens, I mean, I don't think we've ever done it, what happens if we say no? Then what?
Then the developer can make a decision on what they want to do to go forward with the preliminary. Again, it's non-binding.
Okay.
You, I mean, they make their decision on what they wanna do, if they wanna proceed with preliminary PUD. You have your own independent discretion to say yes, or to give your opinion on whether you like the project or not as well. Ultimately, you will be a recommending body and they will be the deciding body, but you're not bound by their opinions, you have your own, and the developer's not bound by either of your opinions until you're actually in the preliminary and final PUD process.
And don't believe we don't look at your nose when they come to us, you know, because that's important.
Very much.
No, I'm sure you do. That's what we're here for.
Thank you, Commissioner. Trustee Vito? My only point I want to make on this is that I think we have to be consistent with our concept review after it goes to the planning commission and comes back, to not reject it again on concept, but to reject it on something based on what the planning commission did. Because what I fear is gonna happen on this, and what kind of happened with the trucking company is, what went to concept review, it was a 3-3, I think, because I was gone. It would have been a 4-3. Then it goes to the planning commission, and then it comes back to us. They rejected it, comes back to us, and we rejected it on concept, not based on any of the issues that they brought up. We basically told them, we don't think this is a good use for this spot.
Well, that's
Now-
a standard, Joe, that was one of the standards of their special use, was a consistent, that's one of the standards of a special use, is the use in that neighborhood and the orderly development of
So
that
how
area
do-
impact on neighboring properties.
But isn't that the
So
same
in
thing that
variances.
we're gonna consider in the concept review?
That, these are part of the standards, it's just like bigger, kind of bigger picture giving, cause you know only a lot less, you know a lot less details of the concept about how this operates and the use of it, so it's a lot more bigger picture. But these will eventually drill down to the actual standards that apply to, the development. And that was, the trucking is a little unique because it was a special use and not a PUD, so that was also a unique one that went to you guys for concept.
Why wouldn't we just have the higher standard at the beginning of it? If that standard is it gonna change the characteristic of the neighborhood or whatever the special use standard, the actual verbiage is? So we don't say, yeah, we're cool with it, go talk to them, oh, we're just kids. I mean, we knew it was a trucking center at concept review. It's not like we came back and we're like, oh my God,
Well,
this
you
is a
didn't know all
trucking
the
center.
evidence, though, there was a lot of evidence at the public hearing in that one about the impact on the neighborhood that came out at the hearing that you didn't know at concept.
It was a lot more intense.
Like, about.
I mean, yeah, people were loud, I get that.
Well, no, but the number of trucks, how high fences were going to be, the different screening techniques, there were all those details weren't present at concept. You wouldn't have known a lot of that information. You would have known it's trucking, but you would have known the size of the trucks, were people sleeping in them, you know, the size, we didn't even know the full size of the office building, what they were going to be doing in that building, all those things didn't come out until the public hearing, they wouldn't have been at your concept.
I mean, I was at the meeting. I think people still rejected it on concept.
I mean, I guess, I thought that there was.
All right, well, what about this? I mean,
Sort of off
so,
topic, though.
what's that?
Kind of straight from topic.
Well,
But relative to the form.
well, to the form itself, so now it comes back, Opus comes back, I mean, is anyone gonna say we don't want a nursing home there anymore? Cause I feel that this is where that's going after we approved it. And that's a rejection on concept. I mean, you could say, yeah, they'll come back and say, we didn't know that they were gonna have a stucco wall on the left side, and pretend that we are not worried about.
They're still
housing.
expected to answer, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that's fine, that's fine.
They're still expected to address the concerns that came up with the hearing. Now, we have already met with them about it, and they did understand that they're supposed to demonstrate how the remaining land works with their development. They came away understanding that they are expected to demonstrate somehow that the subdivision that they're causing this land to be subdivided, and they're proposing a PUD on the land that they're purchasing. And they get that they're supposed to demonstrate how the remaining land is going to function. So they did come away understanding that is part of what they're.
And actually, to take it a bit further, I think the understanding they walked away with, that they were gonna have a plan for all of that property. They were going to make a PUD out of 17 acres, not just 14 or 7.
Yeah, we'll go back and watch the video, to see if we can, I came away with a slightly different impression than that, but we'll make sure before it goes farther. We'll make sure we go back and watch the tape on it.
And I get what Joe's saying, you know, is that, you know, okay, all of a sudden we thought about it, and yeah, we don't want a nursing home there. That's not the point of this. And that, I certainly don't wanna get into that, is I changed my mind over, you know, sleeping on it. But I would change my mind if they didn't come back with a full project.
But preliminary PUD has specific standards.
Yes.
So-
And again, at concept, you're not approving anything, it's a non-binding decision, so you have every ability to change. You know, you give direction and you say, yeah, that concept in theory looks good, but we wanna see these more elements. A lot of times you guys ask for traffic, plans or market studies, and if they come back and they don't meet your expectations and the standards, it's perfectly acceptable to, not approve it because they don't meet the standards when you actually get into the
I
details.
get it, but I think honestly, if we pulled everybody here to go back to the trucking thing, no one wants a trucking facility there, no matter how they screened it, no matter how many trucks they had, what the sleeping patterns were. We ultimately voted against it because it was a trucking facility. I think, maybe I'm wrong, but I think we voted on concept more than specifics, but I could be wrong.
And John, isn't that what your opening statement stated that? Basically, that you didn't want us to give them the impression that it was a go, and then down the road, change our minds after they invested money and time.
Yeah, which is the importance of saying no, if that's how you feel on the concept, yeah.
So,
That's what
but
I'm
how can
saying,
we,
so that- I'm just
what we're
trying to-
saying here is, how can you say no if we don't have all the details?
Well,
Mallory
you can-
keeps saying that, we haven't dug into it, it's an overall concept.
You can still say no, I mean, you can still have a negative feeling about something even without the details if you don't like the use or what you do know and how the orderly development, and say we don't, you know, for example, with the Opus, without, you know, I'm not okay with this because I don't see the rest of the plan phased out, and so I'm not in favor of it because of that, you know, in one of the elements, again, make it clear, not necessarily the use, but the whole development of that, or if you're putting some,
So you're suggesting that instead of us saying yes, we say no because we don't see the whole picture and we don't see what we want?
If that's how you feel, I mean, I think you need to
well,
be,
go back to what Ray said, and I agree with him. He's expecting certain things to come back to us, okay, and that's the only reason we said yes, is that we were with the expectations that they were gonna fix what we said was wrong.
yes, but you're at step like 5 already. By asking that question, you're already over here, or here. If you're up here, do you want a senior facility on the 17 acres? Yes or no? Before you get to the next thing, you have to answer that. In your own mind, forget this. In your own mind, you have to say, yeah, I'm cool with a senior living facility at the 17 acres. Even though, then you get to the rest. Now you ask about access. You ask about, is it a full plan or is it just gonna be part of a plan? What's the impact on traffic? What's the impact on services? Is it bringing in any revenue? All those other things fall under the umbrella of, do I even like the idea?
Yeah, we like the idea.
Trustee.
But maybe you
We
don't.
want certain standards.
Yeah, I do.
Trustee Krueger and then trustee Brady.
Because of Opus, we're talking about that one, at the meeting, I specifically asked them if and I believe I was pretty clear and they knew where I was going, is we have 7 nursing, senior living facilities already in this town, tell me why we need another one. And he talked about a marketing study that they had done and then proved to them, and I'm like, where is that for me? I didn't get that. That would have been helpful to me because I don't believe we need another one. But I also knew that we could say no, but what would have been the point of my saying no, except that I did say, I would like to see that marketing study, you know, next time we see you again. So that's what I'm waiting for. I'm waiting for that market study that tells me we need another one of these. But for me to have said no that day and voted no, what was the point? First of all, I was the last one to vote. Everybody else voted yes. And they were gonna do it. They were gonna go forward anyway, which they are entitled to do. So it was tough for me to stick to my, well, I didn't get that marketing study here at the concept review, so I'm gonna say no right now. So I said yes, hoping that they're gonna get one along the way. But I reserve the right that at preliminary PUD, if I don't have a marketing study that tells me we need another one of these, I'm voting no.
So a couple things, even if you, just to everybody, even if there was a marketing study that said, yeah, we could totally fill this, because of course that's what a marketing study is gonna say, because it's not about, is there a senior community that needs housing? It's up to you in a representative government to think about the 40,000 people of this town as to whether you want another senior living facility. It doesn't really matter if the market in the Chicagoland area dictates that there's a demand for this. You get to say, particularly at the concept review level, whether you want that market to be filled in the village of Wheeling, A, and B, on this particular land specifically. The other thing I would say is I would hope no one feels that your consensus, or lack thereof, avoiding the word vote, doesn't matter, because I think there's two things. There's the aggregate vote, there's the aggregate opinion. What did the board say? Yes or no? But there's also every comment that is made should be taken by the developer as serious concern for them if A, it's a roadblock, or B, it's even an opportunity for them to improve their project. So even if everybody else, and I'm not looking at you because you asked the question, but anybody, if it's 6-0, I think if there's something that would be important to bring up, even if you know that the end result is still going to be favorable, I think it's really important that that information be provided to the developer to help them.
And can I piggyback one more really quick?
Go ahead.
Is that if you, as you said, these aren't weighted. So if overall you're in favor, but you really are not sure about the market aspect, you can also make that clear that that is a concern of yours, and you need more information on that to be comfortable with this. But right now, and Jeff, maybe on the larger scale, you're okay with saying move forward, and you know, and you did it, you know, with the market study or other aspects you have in the past, delineate what you expect to see, that you're still not sure and that you're not fully comfortable or sold 100% on. And that could be even clearer to the developers to know really what they need to change for preliminary PUD.
Trustee Veto.
Yeah, Mary's making the point I'm trying to make, is that if we vote on a concept and it goes to the planning commission, comes back, in her example, she now doesn't get the market study and says, I don't like the concept of the nursing home. It's not anything that happened at the planning commission that they don't have enough shrubs or, you know, whatever goes on. But now we've said concept yes, planning commission says no, we don't like the screening. We come back and say, no, we don't want a nursing home anymore. I don't think we can or should do that. I think that's what happened in the trucking incidents, and I disagree with that. I think that's what's gonna happen on this. So I'm just worried that has developers spend and waste a lot of time in town and makes us a place that looks like we're not very friendly to them.
All the more reason to be upfront at the initial concept.
I get it.
And honestly, I assume you're talking to your colleagues, right? I mean, about how they vote then at the preliminary PUD.
Yes.
He's suing us.
But, and I'm gonna give myself permission to jump in, trustee Lang here, sorry. But if we say we want this room, yeah, this room would be a great cafeteria. And then we turn it over to the planning commission, and your job is to decide where the candy machines are gonna go. Yeah, this would be a great cafeteria, we'd like some candy machines and some fridges. And then the guy who's gonna build the cafeteria comes back, and there's a jacuzzi and 2 saunas and, you know, tanning beds. And it comes back to us, and we said, yeah, we really wanted a cafeteria, but this doesn't look like a cafeteria. You know, it doesn't have the refrigerators and it doesn't have the candy machines. I mean, and we still would like a cafeteria here, but they're not giving us the cafeteria we asked for.
That's a different, your example, if I can cut it.
Please.
Your example will be different if we want a cafeteria concept, okay? Then it goes to the plan commission and we say we want a vending machine in that corner and a refrigerator in that corner. And it comes back and there's 4 vending machines in that corner and 2 vending machines in that corner and there's no refrigerator. Then we can say, you didn't meet our standards, we still want a cafeteria. If they come back from the plan commission and we say, we no longer want a cafeteria at all, like we did with the trucking, like we're gonna do with the nursing home, we have wasted their time. We could have said that at step one. If we say we like a cafeteria, and then they go to the plan commission and they get all the plans out and they don't follow them, okay, well, you didn't follow the plans. It's different. They're not saying.
Well, it's more like,
It's
your
semantics.
example about a cafeteria is more like, I want a cafeteria, but we give you, they come back with a cafeteria that's the size of that kitchen, and then the rest of the project is wasted. So then are you gonna say yes again because you got your cafeteria?
If I personally like the cafeteria, yes.
If it's 1/3 the size, if it's not what they told you that you were gonna get,
Yeah.
and you're still happy with that?
If I'm still happy with it, yes, I will vote the way I feel.
Okay.
I'm saying that if they come back with a bathroom and we approve the cafeteria, then I would say no.
No, that's not what you're saying.
Right. If I say we want a cafeteria and they come back with a cafeteria that's not as good as you guys want it, doesn't have the Ken Moore top line,
It's not what you asked us to ask them for.
whatever. If it
Or
doesn't
work
come,
with what they're supposed to be working with.
well, that depends. I mean, you ask.
No, it's
them-
not
Well, how much
it's what they
detail is
presented.
expected of the concept then?
Well, see, this is the problem, is all of that is way deep in the weeds for a concept review.
Right.
Do you like the cafeteria? And I mean, I don't know that, my personal opinion, I don't think you're wrong. I think if that's what we're trying to avoid here, is I recognized, staff recognized that this could potentially lead to a reputation issue of the Village of Wheeling being business unfriendly. And before we get there, this is an attempt to, because we can't control how you vote at the beginning, or step one or step three, with the Plan Commission being step two. But at least if we create a frame around the information, now it's really just up to, it's up to you as individuals to remain consistent at the concept level. So that if you said, we're okay with the trucking facility in this parcel, on this parcel, then you should still be okay conceptually with the truck parking concept on that parcel, save for the fact that they didn't really mess up the plan in between, so that you could point to something specific. In the cafeteria example where yours was, they doubled the candy machines, or, so now the use is too intense, right? So that's what this was, an attempt to get ahead of.
Right, and I'm just trying to say it in a different manner. I mean, if we approve the concept, we shouldn't reject it again on concept. And Jeff's getting in a different argument with me, he's just mad because I don't always listen to the Plan Commission. But that's a different deal. But if they come for a cafeteria and you guys say you want the cafeteria one way and they still come back with a cafeteria that I like and you guys don't like, I'm gonna vote for it. What I'm saying is, I'm not gonna say no on the fact that it's a cafeteria alone, because I've now switched my mind and I think it should be a bathroom. Or something better. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I agree with you, but I think it's really, you're talking to your colleagues.
I am. Everybody. We're all in a hug.
I got trustee Lang.
Grace, you and I are hugging after.
All right.
Oh, I'm sorry, trustee Brady, then trustee Lang, then trustee Vogel, were you in line?
No, I'm done.
Okay, sorry, Brady, Lang,
Before I start, I wanna make a statement.
Preach.
It's a big difference between being a tough community and being easy. Big difference. Do we wanna be an easy community that developers can walk in and make demands, or are we gonna make developers walk by our rules? That's the key. Basically, getting back to this Opus deal, I don't know, have we got any revised site plans from them?
You're in line.
Since,
Only to the level that we know they're gonna subdivide the property. Is that a fair statement?
so you know what Opus is doing here, I don't know if anybody else recognizes it. They want to be on the corner. They want their building to be on the corner, and they want everything, so everybody can see them. What good is an 8-acre retail site behind their building gonna do anybody? Who's gonna come in there, use their street to get to the shopping it's not gonna work, period. The whole site will not work. Unless Opus wants to buy all 17 acres, you know, but that ain't what we planned for. So I would say the best thing to do is just say no.
But have they gone to the plan commission for concept?
No,
No.
not from the
That's what I thought.
commission for concept review yet.
You know, it's as simple as that, you gotta watch these guys.
Well, it's not, there's nothing, we don't have the authority to now tell them that they
We're getting
can't
a little-
go.
Let's
Getting a
not,
little
I don't
specific
wanna
here.
get into too much debate and discussion on your
No,
thoughts
but-
on the Opus project specifically, we're talking about.
No, I know, because it's coming up, but I mean, you know, that's the
Well,
difference.
we're talking about the concept review and the procedure and how we wanna better convey.
To maintain a consistent
information.
format, right?
Yeah.
And out of fairness,
I'll have
they're
to-
not here to defend themselves.
I'll have to see if I can dig out my, developers, dirty dozen. The statements and the sentences that developers use, and you can tell that they're shysters.
Trustee Brady, what I would say to that is, again, if you look at the bottom, the staff said all these things that you're saying.
Yeah.
So, again, I think you're speaking more to your counterparts than.
Trustee,
We're all in this together.
Andrew, Mr. Brady, trustee.
You know, when we
Lang.
say yes to a concept, that maybe if it was done right, we might be able to accept it. And then send it to them, we're hoping that they have the authority to make it right. If they don't, then come back to us, we should say no.
Trustee Lang.
So as I was gonna say is that what would really be helpful to all of us is that if we had a kind of a summary of facts and findings that was attached to the next step of what happened in our concept review meeting, what everyone added, what everyone was looking for based on, and it's all in the notes. It's all recorded.
Which would be the third column.
Yeah, so, but what trustee Papanto said, what trustee Brady said, things that, you know, just like the facts and findings from the plan commission, and added as a kind of a moving document that just keeps on tacking on to this packet. So we know what we said, so when we say that, yeah, I'm okay with a trucking company, but here's what I was disagreeing with, disagreeing on, and so I would know that it's there.
Sure, we can,
Is that something easy enough to add to our packet where we have, like, it would keep growing?
That would help us too.
Yeah, that would help.
That helps us a lot.
Yeah.
Would help them a
Because
lot.
we all, I think, speaking for myself, I watch the meetings.
Right.
All the time as well, even if I have to watch them a couple days later. But it's absolutely important for us to know what your needs
Oh,
are.
yeah, without a doubt.
You know, for us going forward.
I think it's easy.
And then,
So
but
that living
don't, you know,
document
don't
would be
just stop
fabulous.
there. And even though a packet then gets pretty thick, I mean, most of it's electronic for us anyway, and if it just is always there, then you had something to reference.
Sure.
You know, and it doesn't have to be verbatim, but if it's the headlines, I think that would really help all of us. I know it'll help me, seeing, you know, what it is that we liked and didn't like about this project, what we questioned about it, what doubts we may have had, and do they fulfill those needs?
Thank you.
And I think that helps because that way, if the seven board members all want exactly the same thing, and then it goes to the plan commission and they want the complete opposite, the developer has no idea where to go.
Sure.
Right? So that at least tells everybody halfway where to go.
So we're gonna have this sheet before any more concept reviews?
Yes.
Good. Good job. Good job, Andrew.
Team effort.
Mr. Jennings.
We had, I think when we were putting this together, we had a short list of goals, which was to simplify this, to get feedback that was useful for everybody. I think it's accomplished. I really appreciate everybody's thoughts tonight on it. It was the kind of buy-in that we're looking for. I think the struggle that everybody has had and how to do this better, I think it just further reinforces that we need a tool to direct the conversation and focus. So I think that, I personally just appreciate the feedback.
Commissioner O'Connor.
Just, again, to reinforce what Ray said, and about having all of this information and the village board together is really important. And then what I'd like to add, number 11, is for Joe, the number of shrubs we need. So he will read that, at least he'll read that one, that piece of it. But it's because
Stucco on the west side.
we do, and just to, watching the meetings, and, you know, we try to attend them, and I try to watch videos, especially when it comes to concept reviews. And we used to do this, if we have a heads up as to if there's a concept review coming, like on a Monday, and we can get that, you know, when you publish the agenda. Now, I know I get an email of the agenda, but sometimes I look at it later. If we know that it's coming, that we know we can either watch it live or go to the meeting to see what actually everybody is saying would be very helpful.
Sure,
Yeah.
we had been pretty regular about that in the past. We can certainly try to do better
Right,
about it.
because it is really helpful to hear the actual input from the trustees, you know, when they're talking about it. Because on the one that you guys have been discussing, I heard what Ray said about the total plan of all of the properties. So that would be my assumption when it comes to us with the concept. But I'm hearing different things, so it's all good to hear. As Jeff said, the more information we have that we can make decisions on, the better off we as a village are.
Any other questions or comments? Mr. Spondulis, how do you feel?
I'm quite content.
Well, that's.
Motion to adjourn over here.
Second.
What? That was,
Motion to
oh, what?
adjourn.
Oh, Joe, trustee Vito made a motion to adjourn, trustee Brady seconded.
Wait.
Yeah.
Wake up.
Vito?
Trustee Vito.
For your computer.
Trustee Brady. All in favor?